Alright, so let me tell you a story. All I need you to do is to close your eyes and focus, and I will say the words and you try to imagine it to be as real as possible. So you went on an organized hike. After a long ride, you pitched a tent, checked all your gear once again, and you went to bed. The next morning, you woke up, made a nice breakfast, enjoyed a fresh cup of coffee, and after that, you joined the others and you started walking onto this long anticipated hike. Now, there's a dozen of people in your group, and you're walking on this trail that is following a small creek. Suddenly, you hear a low rumble, and the guide whispers, "They're here." You turn your heads, and for the first time in your life, you lay eyes on a small group of woolly mammoths. They walk by, seemingly not even acknowledging your presence, while you stand there in silence and deep admiration, feeling blessed and grateful. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, here's the thing, this may not be just an imagination or wishful thinking. It may be a reality soon. But the real question that we have to ask ourselves is, will it happen? Or more importantly, should it happen? See, bringing extinct species back to life is not a novelty concept as you may think. In the early 20th century, there was an attempt of so-called backbreeding, or breeding backwards down the evolutionary tree to produce, in this instance, cattle that resemble its wild ancestors. The idea was to enable the breeding of future cattle with some positive traits from its history, thus making it more resilient among other things. This attempt failed, however, mostly because at the time they still didn't have a clear picture of how those ancestors really look like and what would be the ultimate goal of this project. Now fast forward to the end of the century, in the early 90s, everyone was in awe after Jurassic Park showed us how would it look like if we brought back the dinosaurs. Apart from the cool part, it also hinted at potential complications with this idea. Nonetheless, people started talking about it, newspapers were exploring the possibilities, until the scientists made it clear that due to the age of the fossils and the fact that DNA breaks up much sooner than that, everyone felt disheartened. A couple of years later, however, a new spark was lit in a hope of bringing extinct life back among us, and that spark was in the shape of Dolly the sheep. She was born on the 5th of July of 1996 and had 3 mothers. One provided egg, another one DNA, and the third carried the clone embryo to term. This was groundbreaking in a sense that now we knew that we can clone an organism from a mature cell of a certain body part in a decently preserved DNA sample. Now, although dreams of bringing Tyrannosaurus Rex remained mostly dead dreams, people started looking closer into our history, and it didn't take long for us to zoom in on woolly mammoths. See, the issue of getting a usable DNA from a dinosaur era is the fact that they were exposed to elements for far too long. The climate has changed many times as well as the environment, so something as fragile as DNA sample couldn't possibly survive that. By considering that mammoths, along many other species, lived in a much more recent and more importantly cold ice age, their bodies, at least some of them, were preserved in a layer of permafrost. This layer of frozen soil effectively acted like a freezer for their corpses, stopping or delaying the process of decay, thus preserving the DNA itself. So we have the technology, we have the material. How come we still don't have herds of mammoths blocking soccer mom runs to the local Starbucks and practice? Well, to put it simply, it's not that simple. Firstly, we have to think of what are we trying to achieve. If we want to produce a species of hairy elephant-looking creature that will roam the northern latitudes of our planet, then the answer is yes, we can probably do that. We would use preserved cells of a woolly mammoth, combine them with their closest living relative, which would be an Asian elephant, and with a bit of luck, about 2 years later, we will have a healthy fur ball rolling down the slopes and figuring out what is trunk all about. However, if we're trying to bring back the actual woolly mammoth exactly as it was during the Ice Age, well, that is almost certainly not possible. See, extinct animals are exactly as the word implies. They're extinct, meaning that there is not a single member of that species still alive, and that is the end of that evolutionary branch. Now, in fairness, technology does progress, and who knows what will be possible in the future. But as of now, this remains out of our reach. Now, before we go any further, we have to answer one basic and legitimate question. Why would we bring any species back to life, including mammoths? Well, this happens to be one of many points of contention between scientists, with some seemingly valid reasons behind both sides. See, those who are opposed to this idea are arguing that these new species can negatively impact the already existing and fragile ecosystem. As we know, every species has a certain role that it fulfills in nature, and processes like extinction or overpopulation will have a significant implication on that environment and other species that are their main prey, predator, or indirect beneficiary of their behavior. Now, putting a large mammal that weighed up to 6 tons and multiply that with thousands can dramatically change the landscape, possibly much more than we can predict. Another potential issue is morality of that process. Remember, we will be trying to bring back, or more accurately create, new species that may or may not be extremely susceptible to bad genetic mutations and diseases, among other things. For many scientists, it is undoubtable that this will be a trial and error process rather than a streamlined success. Now, considering that we are talking about living organisms, well, you get the picture. There is also an issue of financing that huge endeavor. As of right now, most of the funds for conservation of endangered species comes from state funds and donations through various nonprofit organizations. If we divert some of those funds to this new project, that will put a strain on this already underfunded effort and possibly seal the fate of some of those precious species. As you can see, that very much defeats the purpose. Now, there are counter reasons for every one of these, of course, and that is the reason why the interest for this project just continues to grow. For example, those in favor say that the financing strain can be picked up by a private sector. Today, we see the surge of private companies in areas where that was unthinkable only a few decades ago. Best example of this is a renewed space race that is already benefiting us in a form of better and more accessible internet connection. So clearly, there is something to this. One of the biggest reasons why people are pushing for it is potential impact of these large roaming mammals on a climate change reversal. See, the idea is that these new mammoths in large numbers and disperse into the tundras of north can stomp the snow, thus preventing the soil from releasing massive amounts of green gases into the atmosphere. Now, in fairness, the numbers required to make any noticeable impact will be in hundreds of thousands at least, and this process will probably take centuries to show any results. The potential benefit, however, wouldn't stop there. See, if possible, this will allow us some diversification of species adapted for certain locations. Mostly in areas where, due to the human intervention, previous dominant species went extinct and new ones were brought in, thus seriously damaging the ecosystem. Some of these examples will be Australia, New Zealand, and some of the Pacific Islands. Now, in this sense, we will be looking at the potential of the concept rather than just one species and its effect. One way or another, it remains to be seen whether this will ever happen, and who knows, maybe one day you wake up with a mammoth staring at you through your window. So that brings us to the end of this video today. Thank you very much for tuning in today. That means the world to me. If you want to like or subscribe or share, this helps also. I do also have a Patreon account, which is located down in the description. You can go over there. Soon I'm going to be sharing some background scenes on there and some other content that is normally not available here. I'm also on Twitter, on TikTok, on Threads, on whatever it is. All those links you can find down. And yeah, please tell me what you think about this. I would like to discuss this with you, and I want to see what do you think about the potential implications of human intervention in evolution, because right now we're pretty much at that point. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.